afternoon, everybody. Here we are at the book club. Um, I am sorry that sort of lots of people had a little trouble joining today. Heaven knows why. But these are the glitches of technology and all that. But I think most of us are here, and I hope the others have a smooth transition. Now here today are Maria Dragonette,
Yeah, Julien.
Anna Dragonette and Maria Julien, who are going to talk about Enid Blyton's books, how they have been read, and how they are newly being looked at. I think this is a very interesting topic because I can bet my bottom dollar each one of us has read Enid Blyton. Now, at that age, Enid Blyton books were the staple uh, stuff that we read. And I don't think anyone ever suspected anything subversive, something odd, something, beyond just the written word. I don't think anyone did. But, there's a constant reevaluation going on of every book. And that's what the word rereading means. Because every time a book is read and reread, times have changed, your mind has changed. There is some kind of change. And so the reading is different. Okay? So, very interesting. I'm so happy Maria and Anna have chosen this topic. And so I am now handing the mic over to them. The rest of us will now mute our mics, please, so that only their voices are heard. So, would you please begin by just telling us a little bit about yourselves and then go on with Enid Blyton? Over to you.
Okay, so Maria said that I should just talk for both of us. We are sisters. We grew up in Bombay, Mumbai, and grew up in because we're children of a mixed marriage. We grew up in an English speaking. You can hear?
Yeah.
We spoke English at home, and we grew up reading English language books from a very early age. And as Mohini said, Enid Blyton was a staple, though we did read other stuff. But we always thirsted for the next Enid Blyton. And yeah, as we went along in life, we did all the things we had to do. But once we retired from our teaching and stuff, whatever it was we were doing, we started what is called Angkor, the Language Arts Club, where we share literature we with children, and we prepare them for speech and drama exams. And so we have our return to literature. And we did find at first that Enid Blyton was sort of anathema to, especially in the UK. I mean, we actually had people say about Malaritas, what rubbish are you reading? So anyway, that's why once we are back in the whole literature situation, we thought, yeah, let's talk about this, because uh, all literature is written within the scope of its time, even the best possible, the most revered authors, right? Anyone can at any time pick some holes into it. Oh, this is how he treated the Irish. This is how they spoke about the slaves. This is how, there's always something that we could object to. So I feel, right, and Maria also feels that we have to, while we're teaching children, reading from these books, right, we need to always keep the platform open for discussion on controversial issues. And so that's why today we are doing this thing. I hope I've spoken enough about us and our involvement or engagement with today's presentation. Yeah, shall I carry on then? Okay. So, first of all, we are looking over here at one of the most prolific writers in history. Uh, I mean, she's written so many books and sold, here it says 500 million copies, for translated into 40 languages, TV serials in UK, despite all the adverse criticism. Uh, she sells one book a minute, and her books are now kind of outdated, but children still love them. So there is evidently something that draws children to it. So we just have a look at what it is, at the various charges that have been leveled against Enid Blyton books. They've been called racist, gender discriminate, lacking in literary merit. There may be many other things as well, but we thought we'd just touch upon these three things. And being such a prolific writer, she's got so many books. We thought rather than swim aimlessly through the whole, the plethora of books that she's got, we'll just stick with the famous five as kind of what do you call it, representative of Enid Blyton's work. So everything that we are discussing will be related to a famous five book. So if we look at Enid Blyton was racist, uh, yes, it could be that there will be situations in her books where you could say, yes, that's a racist statement. It depends exactly on how we define statements. But there are books where she's described children in Africa, which actually uh, make us feel very uncomfortable. But on the other hand, if you see certain characters in a book, so I'll just take one, Pierre Lenoir, also known as Souti. Pierre Lenoir, uh, it's a French name, and France had a lot of colonies also uh, in Africa. So Pierre Lenoir is very dark skinned, very dark haired, and dark eyes. So his heritage is obviously there is some African heritage. But he's studying in a British school and he is very naughty. That's about literally the only negative statement about him. In all other ways, he's a kind of a little hero. He's got a great sense of humor. He's kind. He's fearless. He's intelligent. And then, of course, he's dark skinned and curly haired. So we see that you could call her racist, but at the same time, she's
Mukul, why don't you do one thing? Bhagya, I'm already looking at it, but take your mobile, the book club, such a WhatsApp message.
Yeah, so here is Pierre, dark skin, mixing with all these fair haired children, and all of them admiring him, respecting him, following his leadership. His sister is fair haired and fair haired and blue eyed, but she's not got his kind of character, you know. All right, so there are other cases of where she has written about the bravery of various marginalized classes, we could say bravery, their strength of character, the things that they could bring to the table. Okay, so now the second one, the second charge against her is that she's gender discriminate. It's true. You could say that, yeah, Anne is all sweet and loves doing housework and, uh, you know, um, it gives girls the idea that this is your place and this is where you should be. And Julian and Dick are the boys who are always taking the decisions, and Julian especially uh, giving the orders, and everyone kind of has to fall in line with Julian, especially the girls. And Julian often says, no, the girls can't come and uh, this is the work for boys and stuff. So you could call it gender discriminate. So given its time, right? She wrote between the world wars. She was actually very revolutionary in her attitude to girls. So you see, you have George. Here's George who can do everything that the boys can do and better. Absolutely fearless, absolutely capable of doing so many things. Rowing from Kiran Island to from Kiran to the island. She's the only one who can row the boat through the rocks. The boys cannot. You know, very few people, one or two fisher folk can. So she's a very special human being. Now, Anne is typical what you could say girl type, girly, you know, sweet, pretty, everybody loves her. But Anne has tremendous character, tremendous character. She has a lot of power and huge influence in many of the books. You know, she shows that though she's sweet, when she has to stand up for what is right, she becomes the tiger, you know. And then, of course, we have Joe. Joe is, uh, I don't, Joe's a gypsy girl, right? But, uh, yeah, maybe a circus child, not from the privileged background that these four people are from Julian, Dick, Anne, and George. But they make friends with her and they have lots of adventures with her. And she is, again, though she's a girl, she has every capacity to do what a boy could do. So we have two girls here who are as good or better than boys
And brave.
and very brave. Uh, but we have Anne who's showing that what is the power and strength of the feminine, you know. So I feel that Enid Blyton was creating within us as children an understanding of the difference in the genders and helping us to break out of the constraints of our times. And I think she did succeed because the world is different today, uh, where where gender issues are concerned. Yeah, they also there is this strange allegation that she's lacks literary merit. Yeah, I mean, she's writing for children. She's not Charles Dickens or whoever the other main, I mean, the big authors were. But she's writing for children. And she's painting with her pen pictures for children to admire and become part of. So here we have a description of a storm. Storms are things that people are scared of, right? And even if you look at in what's that Sound of Music, it says, okay, it's scary, but think of nice things. Don't think about the storm. Think of raindrops on roses and etc. Right? But see the way she writes it. The lightning flashed and the thunder crashed at the same moment. Julien couldn't help feeling rather overawed. The storm was so magnificent. The lightning tore the sky in half almost every minute, and the thunder crashed so loudly that it sounded almost as if the mountains or something's gone wrong. No, it won't. It'll come to the next. Go up front. Yeah. I don't know why that happened. I changed it. So you see, here we have Julien overawed by the storm, the majesty of it, the beauty of it. He's rooted to the spot. He's completely taken up by it. And Anne is terrified. But they bring Anne out. And Anne also learns to appreciate the beauty of a storm. So the literary merit here is that she takes us as children and shows us a storm in all its beauty. And later on, she says the sea's voice could be heard as soon as the thunder stopped. Again, we're transported there. You know, we are there on that island which is being ravaged by this storm. And we are, the majesty of it is consuming us as much as it was consuming those four children. And the waves were like great walls of gray green, terrifying, right? They dashed over the rocks that lay all around the island, and the spray from them flew from them. The spray flew from them, gleaming white in the starry sky or the stormy sky. So I think there is a huge amount of literary merit here. It gave us as children the idea of uh, transported us to different areas, different settings. Uh, we did used to see some little bit of wild sea fury on Marine Drive or Apollo Bandar and whatever. But we were living in a city. We didn't ever see this kind of thing. And she took us there, and I would say that with huge literary merit. So those are the 3 points we were discussing. We were where the points of criticism, and now we're just going into how much Enid Blyton did for all of us, right? So we were reading in Enid Blyton. We were in kind of post-colonial India. We even had a few colonial attitudes ourselves. It was kind of rubbed
Very
off.
much.
Yeah. And now we read certain things which she read for us. She put forward to us, which made us think about our attitudes. And also, we also did have a very strong set of moral values, which we were like, okay, firm, yes, this is it. Okay, so here we have this boy who is a coward. Somebody's called him a coward. And he says, I can't help it. Like, I am a coward. I just can't help it. And Julien says to him, Julien is another very interesting character. Anybody can help being a coward. Cowardice is just thinking of your own miserable skin instead of somebody else's. Why, even little Anne is more worried about us than she is about herself. And that makes her brave. She couldn't be a coward if she tried. So here we have a definition of cowardice, where, I mean, we have Socrates and various other people describing courage. But here she has described to us cowardice. Cowardice as thinking of yourself before you think of somebody else. And then here is a woman who's a poor woman who's being ill-treated by the men around. The poor woman scuttled about. Anne was sorry for her. She went over to her. Shall I clear away and wash up for you? She asked. You're going to be busy and I have nothing to do. We'll all help, said Julien. So these are privileged children who are seeing the pain, the misfortune of a poorer person and are willing to come out of their little cocoon to help, you know. Uh, yeah, I mean, they didn't wash dishes or clear up at home, not necessarily. They didn't have to anyway. But they were willing to do it to help somebody in trouble. So, some more about how all of us, our characters, have been uh, influenced by Enid Blyton. So, there's empathy first. You know, Dick is a very kind, he's very brave also, but he's also very kind. He says, she looks as if a little kindness would do her good. He's talking about Joe. Joe is a very ruffianly sort of a child they've met on the beach. Uh, what's the matter, kid? So first time Dick says, maybe what she needs is a little kindness. Another time when she's been hammered by her father, what's the matter, kid? He said kindly. He spoke to her so kindly that tears trickled down Joe's face when she heard the kindness in his voice. The power of kindness we are exposed to at that tender age when we're reading this book. And now again, when we talk about stealing, I mean, sure, I think Les Miserables has also taken us to uncrime and punishment and etc. the criminal side of the story. But here we have, I think it's Dick who says about stealing. Joe says, well, wouldn't you if you were so hungry that you couldn't even bear to look at a baker's cart, said Joe. Dick has just told her that it's wrong to steal. So she says, like, well, wouldn't you if you were starving? You could so much that you can't even look at the food. So Dick says, no, I don't think so. But then he thinks again, at least I hope not, said Dick, wondering what he really would feel like if he was starving. So, yeah, I mean, these are passages that have made us today what we are. Then also, she was a great environmentalist, as were many British writers. Uh, and you always find a little descriptions of the animals, the wildlife, all the bunnies in Kirin Island. And nobody was allowed to chase them. Timmy was strictly kept in line. And the bunnies were like almost tame. Then we have fields of wildflowers. We have the moors wreathed in mists. Sometimes at night, when they're camping outdoors and Timmy's asleep, and she said, Timmy didn't hear the hedgehog scuttle by or even notice when a beetle or a spider. You see, all the little nightlife she kind of brings to us. That, yeah, at night, the earth is alive with all kinds of little things, you know. And here's another description. Soon the lane ended in a broad cart track that led over a heathery common. The common sloped right down to the edge of an enormous blue lake that lay glittering in the August sunshine. So, again, a description of the beauty of nature, uh, which made out of which all us environmentalists are born, right? Okay. Here they are exploring some caves. Then came to a magnificent one, a cave full of what looked like gleaming icicles. Oh, said Anne, catching her breath, what a wonderful sight. How they gleam and shine. It reminds me of cathedrals. So, here again, the cave of stalactites and stalagmites, and how they are reminded of the beauty and majesty of the cathedrals. And we all know what the British cathedrals are like. They're so awesome, you know, awe inspiring. And I think it's actually Julien who said this, feels the same thing about this cave. Then the description of spring water. Oh, it's as cold as ice, simply delicious. I could drink gallons of this water, you know. All right. Then again, love of animals. We have the chimpanzee Pongo in one of the books. I think a circus animal who the children look after and care for. Then we have George, Sniffer, and Clip in Mystery More. Clip is a gypsy's horse, and
Sniffer is also a gypsy boy.
yeah, Sniffer is a gypsy, and Clip has hurt his foot, and they do not allow, they as in even the farmer whose farm they're living on, they say that this horse is not in a fit condition to pull a wagon. So you'll have to stay behind for a day or two till the horse is strong enough. So caring about the animal is not a machine for us to use, to gain our own economic benefit or profit. Then we have, of course, the loving relationship between Benny and the pig in one of the books. And the pig is practically the hero of the story. And
He
then
saves the day.
he saves the day, yeah. Eily is a little girl who has a lamb. There's Tinker and a monkey. So a lot of animals and love of animals being brought in. Another thing is that she does have a lot of life lessons in her books, which maybe when we're young we didn't really think much about, but it buried itself in our subconscious. Subconscious. There's Quentin, who's George's father. Why didn't you tell me? Now the children are thinking. Firstly, you wouldn't have believed us. Secondly, you are bad-tempered and unjust, and we are frightened of you. Thirdly, we didn't trust you enough to do the right thing. So here we are children thinking this about adults or hearing somebody else, so that when we grow up to be adults, we keep this in mind that children should be able to trust us. We should have, however scientific or artistic or clever we are, we cannot let our ill temper frighten children, and children should always know that we will do the best thing for them. And there's another point over here where Timmy, the dog, right, is aware that the tutor is up to some fishy business. And naturally, the tutor is now trying to get Timmy out of the way. And George's father listens to the tutor. And so they start punishing George and Timmy in rather not exactly cruel, but rather strict. I mean,
Unnecessary.
unless harsh is the word. And George wants to fight against it. But Julian tells her, like, grown ups were so powerful and could dole out all kinds of punishments. She didn't care how much she was punished herself, but she couldn't bear to think that Timothy might have to share in the punishments too. So here we have, it's a kind of a life lesson for a child, it's a life lesson for all of us. In the face of extreme brutality and power, how do we respond? Uh, when that power and that brutality threatens us, we know, okay, we are ready to give our lives, etc. But when it threatens people we love, how do we respond? What is the best way? So it sets us thinking about our own philosophies in life and how we are going to deal with life as we grow up. Yeah. So I mean, I've ended it there. Uh, I thought everyone might want to share or discuss something.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. I'm sure lots of people have lots to say. So let's get going. Hmm? Now, within just make an opening remark myself, because it just so happened that during my Enid Blyton reading years, the years when you would read Enid Blyton, I was not in India. I was in England. And somehow Enid Blyton, now I'd like, Anna and Maria to comment on this. In England, Enid Blyton was not known. Now, I had started reading Noddy when we went abroad. And so when I joined a school and library and all that, I was looking for Enid Blytons because I know that my older brothers and sisters were reading them. But the local library did not have a single Enid Blyton and they hadn't heard of her. So I was rather surprised. But there was no dearth of reading material. So I didn't think of it any further. Um, so, one comment about the absence of Enid Blyton in her own country. I would like to talk about that. But Anna, I do so agree with you that the books do give us life lessons. They do give us moral values, honesty, helping others, being kind, all these things. And although I may not have read so many of them, I know about them. So I can say this. Then there are some stereotypes. I mean, in terms of her lack of literary merit, I know everyone would raise their eyebrows and go, but literary merit of a writer who's writing for little children, and I think who's doing a grand job of storytelling. But she does have stereotypes, like the French teacher. The French teachers are only of two types. One is kind of cute. One is kind of cute and, that
Plump.
exaggerated accent, French accent, and the other is mean,
Mm.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to talk too much, because I'm sure everyone has something to say. So if you could just comment on the absence of Enid Blyton in her own country, and we can move on to other points.
Yeah. So
the absence of Enid Blyton in her own country, yes, that was definitely a thing. Uh, Even as her books were flying off the shelves,
Mm.
uh, the librarians and the authorities, including BBC, all criticized her. And at that time, there wasn't so much of this gender thing and all. Then the main thing was that, first of all, she wrote a lot of books, and her books about the fairies and all. Her own husband, who actually got her published. Later on, when he sort of, they had a rather acrimonious divorce.
Mhm.
And he also said, oh, she was just writing. I was helping Winston Churchill write the history of the British people. And my wife was writing about fairies and pixies, and, and she, in a very dismissive way. He was an influential person, Hugh Pollock, if I'm not mistaken, his name was. And that's how he managed to get her published. But on the other hand, when uh, they started, their marital spats type of thing, it also that contributed to the fact that her reputation suffered. Because in the highbrow literary circles, then it became fashionable to criticize her, because Hugh Pollock was also, he was an editor and a publisher, and uh, he was a big fellow. But I mean, that's just one part of it. Uh,
Mm.
it is true. I mean, one does have to listen to the criticism that, there's a certain sameness, there are tropes and that type of thing. But what could not be ignored was, through it all, her books were flying off the shelves, not only in UK, but in all the Commonwealth countries, Canada, Australia, India, Sri Lanka, and even some other ones like where they were translated. Yes, Malaysia, Indonesia. Now I'm a part of 3 Enid Blyton books on Facebook, and book, groups, sorry.
Mhm.
And you, it's amazing. It's, like like, for example, when I was growing up, it was mostly girls who read the Mallory Tars and the St. Clairs. But now there are so many men who have got such in-depth observations about these so-called books for girls, you know. So I'm just saying that what cannot be ignored, whatever the criticism and all, it must be heard, it must be dealt with. But what cannot be ignored is how her readership have loved her and embraced her. That's the that's why she is
Yes,
who she
yes,
is.
Maria, thank you so much. Thank you. Alka, would you
Yeah,
like to?
hi. Yeah, thanks, Maria and Anna. It was wonderful because, again, like all of us, been a great fan of Enid Blyton, read all her books. I still have them, and to tell you the truth, I still read them sometimes because I ostensibly say they're my daughter's books, but actually they're mine. They're not my daughter's. I still read them. Take, if I have a half an hour, I want to just feel good and go back to my
Yes,
childhood, pick up Enid Blyton and read it. So that's still
yes,
there.
absolutely.
One thing I wanted to say about literary merit, actually, I feel that the authors who are popular, like let's say Agatha Christie, Somerset Maugham, they all were criticized that low literary merit, but well, they sold.
Oh,
So they have something which I feel is more important for an author, which is to how to tell a story,
Mm.
right? There is the
yes,
first thing of an author, which he or she should be doing, is to tell a story,
right.
right? And then how well you tell the story or what you use to tell a story is a different thing. But if
Yes,
you've got that part right, which obviously all these had, that is the first thing. So I mean, I don't think that we should really be saying anything about literary merit, because as you said, of course, they're children's books. So we're
right.
not running or not winning the Nobel Prize for Literature anytime soon for that. That is out. The other thing is about the more than the racist, of course, is one thing. I think also classist is there definitely.
Classist, yeah.
Snobbish,
That
yeah.
is,
Snobbish.
I think, more than racist, because at that time probably UK was all mostly white. So
Yes,
that part about there not being a black character didn't really feature anywhere, which happened even in Friends as late as the 1980s, when the sitcom Friends was, there was no black character in that too. But so I think more than that was the classes where you could clearly make out
hmm.
that these 4 5 children are in a different class and the others are
Yes,
not,
yes,
and how they are treated differently. Even Mr. Goon is treated differently. Ernest Goon is treated differently in the 500. So I think that is there. While I keep saying, because I love in fact, while I keep saying as adults, we have the necessary probably intelligence or the adulthood we have reached of not
Bandwidth.
see yeah, exactly, bandwidth of not seeing the 1920s events. You can't see them from a 2024 eyes. We know that. But then children who are reading at that time, do they necessarily have that intelligence or that kind of, maybe not, which is why I think it's been banned for children, because they feel if I was a child,
Yeah.
then maybe I would be more, if I had a brother and my brother said, it's my job to take care of you and protect you, and you can't do this and you can't tell me what to do. If I'm reading Enid Blyton alone, I might say, okay, maybe that's the way it is. So maybe that is one reason why you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Many of these old TV sitcoms, they say they give a kind of a rider, outdated humor, or something like that, which is okay for, again, for adults like us to understand. But
Yeah.
can children understand that? That is why I think they may have an issue about it being banned.
Yeah, so
Well said, actually, Alka. Yes. Go on, Maria.
yeah. So one thing I would say is that children actually pick up prejudices from their home environment and more than
Yeah.
anything else. That's one thing. Secondly, it's nobody's case that children should only read Enid Blyton. Uh, that's not what we think at all. That's point two. And also, what you were saying about uh, that the brother and all that sort of thing. See, I agree with you there, but even now, tend to protect our girls a bit more for very obvious reasons. So, I mean, even my grown-up daughter, like if she's going out with her partner, then I'm a little okay. She's going out on her own and it's late, and I said, give me just message me when you reach and this and that. So I feel that's a very natural outcome and we have to accept it. And not that we should, my daughter doesn't listen to me however much I'm worried about her. She'll anyway just go out at night whenever she wants and all that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that we should be influenced by it. But what I'm saying is we can understand where people are coming from. Yeah?
Ovidia, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I was reading a book by a guy called Pankaj Seksaria, and then another couple by Deepak Dalal, where these the teenagers are going out on adventures. And I remember very clearly one story where I think they're going to the Andamans or somewhere there,
Yeah.
and they're
Lakshadweep
exploring
Adventure or
and
something.
discovering. And it is the girl who's the most daring.
Right.
I do not remember the title, but I can't help that. But it is the girl who is the most daring, and the
Yes.
boys follow her. And I was so impressed. I said, wow, because that is not the stereotype.
Right. But that's the same thing in Enid Blyton. When I was rather a scary cat, let's say. And I used to love George because she was so fearless. I used to love Jo and long to be like that. And that is very much there in Enid Blyton, where the girls show great bravery uh, and fearlessness, and also physical prowess.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah.
Yes, Rona, you have your.
I just want to say one thing.
Now, I love Enid Blyton. I mean, they were a formative part of my childhood. And Mo is quite right. In England, I did not read Enid Blyton's. I was also there around about the same time or a little earlier. Late 50s and very early 60s. But there were so many other things to read. But I did come
Exactly.
across her children's books much earlier, the ones about the faraway tree.
Oh,
You know?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is so fascinating.
Yes,
That I
yes.
had read in England,
Yeah.
but then of course, I came to India, and then of course it was all of them. I've read all of them. The thing is, when I was a kid, there were in some of them some characters do appear. There was, I think, there was an Indian prince who appeared,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he lived in Bong Castle, India. I straight away laughed at that. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I still remember it. See, so it was obvious, and I think even as a kid, I dismissed it as ignorance on behalf of the author. But so what? Part
Yeah.
of the story is fine. That
Yeah.
kind of a thing. What hit me more was the classism and the genderism you know that but early 60s, you're reading these books. Even in India, we had classism at that time, the same
Yeah.
kind of classism, right? Upper middle class, lower class,
Yes. Yes.
working class, so on. So it was very familiar, and therefore maybe we were not that critical. Today, I wouldn't say criticism, the comment I would have to make is not even about the stereotypes, because that's a technique in a way. Hmm. What the comment I would have to make is, some of her books are very priggish. For instance, the series about the Secret Seven. I
Mm,
never
Yeah.
liked the Secret Seven as much as the Five Find
yeah.
Outers,
Same. Yeah.
because the Secret Seven I felt was really way too priggish. They were so moralistic, those tiny children, amongst each other, you know,
Yes.
berating each other like grown ups and all that. I found that too, even as a
And,
kid, it was not a
Yeah.
favorite with
Yes.
me.
and
Yes.
But
Yes.
also they were had this. They used to be against this Jack's sister Susie for no reason.
Susie.
for
Yes.
no
I mean,
reason,
for
yeah,
no
yeah,
reason. So just
yeah.
that. So yes, there were a lot of these
But
cliques.
again, yeah, yeah.
And
But
Peter
again,
was
it's very
not a very
reflective.
nice character. Yeah. Peter
Yeah.
Uh,
was
Yeah.
too bossy. I also found that.
Yeah.
uh, and I also think that but it's reflective of the society in which she wrote.
Yes.
People were like that, children were like that. So I think what we should commend her for is her insight into the child psyche at that time.
Yes.
Yes, she
Yes.
knew how to appeal to the children's imagination, and she wrote for them after all. So I think, and as I grew older, I found that her books for younger children, Noddy and all,
Yeah.
my son, my grandson, I introduced him to Noddy, when he started reading and all that, age 3 and all, because it was the best kind of, it was interesting, Toyland and all the typical stereotypical characters, a good introduction to, things and the outside world. So I find those books for younger children are actually, I would rate them now much higher than the
Yes.
ones. Though I love the boarding school series. They're my
Yes.
favorites, really. But yeah, so yeah. But
Okay.
that's what I say. The one anti thing is that priggishness,
Yes.
Yes.
holier than thou attitude
The
type of a
goody
thing.
two
Yes.
shoes. You
Yes.
mean
That.
are they
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
goody two shoes?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, the good children are really, really good children, and the
The
bad children
good
are really, really bad children. So there's
and
no,
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
there's
on the
no
other
gray
There's no
area.
hand,
complexity and layering.
Yeah.
But
And
And
even
they're
the
after
very
bad,
conscious
children,
of their goodness, if you get what I
and
mean.
ah,
also the naughty, like there's a naughtiest girl, etc.
There's the naughtiest girl.
They start off even St. Clair's the first year they all are
Yeah,
they're bad children, so to speak, but they
yeah,
eventually become good, and then they
yeah.
become really
yeah,
good.
So that very much that theme of redemption is
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
very, very
yeah,
strong.
yeah.
It's a very strong
No,
theme
but
in many of her
then a
books.
lot of the
So
other
she doesn't just condemn the
yeah,
naughty child.
No. No. She
You know,
doesn't.
yeah.
you're going to be naughty
Which is
forever.
why
There's
the series on Galliano Circus,
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
those
Yeah.
are very different
Very.
because they're
yes,
dealing with people who are outside of society, literally.
yes.
Yeah,
Those are beautiful books. Yeah,
yeah. So
Yeah.
those are
But
those are
even
much better, more free, and they're not so
yeah.
classist or priggish or anything.
yes.
But
So
even
I
in this, what you just said, Maria, sorry, one thing I want to say, when they say that, the bad children are then finally redeemed or something, it happens true, but in Malrita's, it goes right till the end when Gwendoline
Yeah,
is right at the
right
very
at the
last
end.
book. I mean,
Yes,
when things
yes,
really go very wrong for her, then she kind of,
yes.
so she is made to suffer for the
Yeah.
entire series.
Yes,
For
yeah,
that's true. That's true. In fact, you could actually say that the girls bullied her.
yeah,
I mean, by today's standards, at that time,
yes,
it was probably considered not.
yeah,
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 pushing her in the
exactly.
pool
Yeah,
and all was
yeah,
bullying. It is
Yeah.
yeah,
bullying. But
yeah,
I want to say that about the rich children that she writes about, the privileged children. You
mm,
see, that is the thing that the privileged children are the ones who eventually are going to run the world.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who need to develop deeper character, character of kindness, empathy,
Compassion.
consideration, compassion. You see, and this is what she's very clearly doing with these upper class children. And I would say it's successful. And at the same time, the everything has its layers. When the deepest layer is kindness, compassion, empathy, love, right? The other layers can be healed by that. But the deepest layers have to have the deepest uh, emotions, the deepest qualities. And then everything can be dealt with. Because if we have love, right, whoever it may be, however racist we feel towards them, we are aware that they are a human being and we can deal with them with love. So even though I have, okay, you're a slave or you're a scheduled caste or you're a bhangi or whatever it may be, but if I have been inculcated in me basic humanity, basic love, basic empathy, it can overcome those prejudices. So I just wanted to say that in her favor.
Can I
Uh,
comment here? Just one thing. You know, what you say is perfectly true. But one thing I'm always very much aware of, you know, those early 50s, 60s time when these books really came into their own and they were read and all, life was much simpler, you
Simpler.
know.
Yeah.
yes.
And it is, and one thing which might happen if someone is totally brought up on this, it might reinforce classist
Yeah.
feelings.
Absolutely.
It might, which today would be totally dangerous. It's not something we can afford. So it's something which consciously we have to sort of counteract. You know,
Yes.
the
So
But
books
if
also that is
themselves,
I'm
I
a
why,
don't
lower
think should
class
be
person, I
banned.
may not like to read those books.
Yeah,
no, and that is why I think, like my daughter, she didn't read Enid Blyton. I mean,
yeah. My
because I
children also didn't
insisted she
like.
did. I
Yeah,
mean, so she read a little bit of 67, a little bit, but then she kind of wasn't
yeah,
as obsessed about
No,
them as I
no.
was. So
So,
because I think they have lots of other things to read, we had very limited things to read. I mean, when
yeah.
I was again 1960s, when I was growing up, there was hardly any Indian author.
Hardy Boys is what they
Hardy
went
Boys,
for.
but again, Hardy Boys, there's Captain, there's Bigglesworth, Billy
Biggles,
Bunter, all those were the boys' books.
boys
If you
books,
see that Biggles,
So
Captain
we
Biggles
had
books,
Trixie Belladin and
Trixie
Dixie
Belden
all
was
these
there,
Belden and
correct?
all.
American
Yeah,
books.
Trixie
yeah,
Belden
yeah.
was there. So all those,
Nancy Drew.
yeah. So
Nancy
the all
Drew.
thing, but again, when you talk about just now, Anna and Maria, about the compassion and things, I agree again there. But to me, sometimes the compassion or whatever they feel, it is again driven by class. Like if you see in the
Yeah,
Five
yeah,
Find Outers
yeah,
series,
yeah, yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Goon is completely,
Very
sidetracked,
condescending. Very
absolutely condescending.
condescending.
Even a 13-year-old boy like this fatty can kind of look down upon him. He can go directly to that inspector who again happens to be from his class,
Yeah.
and both of them can gang up together against Goon
Yeah,
just because he's
yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
lumpish kind of a
No, but
person.
see,
Huh.
Goon, it's very clear that Goon is a stereotype of the bad cop. He's
Of the of
unjust, he's cruel,
He's a
and
bully. He's a bully.
he's a bully. He picks on weaker people. If you see in the Five Find
Yeah,
Outers,
he does.
he'll always
yes, agreed.
catch the uh, some poor guy who's down and out, or that boy Luke, who's
Yeah, but then also
so.
also the 500 don't make life easy for him.
No, I
Yeah,
After all,
agree. I agree.
he's a village
Uh,
policeman, so
so
he does have his own stereotypes, and he does do a lot of things which he should not do. But then these people, and again, he can't retaliate. The minute he can't do anything to them because they happen to be of the higher class.
upper
yeah.
class.
So
Yeah.
actually speaking, he does kind of retaliate, like when he manages to he hits that Buster with a poker, and he also uh, uh, there's something where he gives Fatty some bruises. I don't know what exactly.
But he gets
Yeah, but,
into so much of trouble. He
Yes,
constantly
yeah,
complaining to the parents.
yeah,
yeah.
constantly, and he beats up on his own nephew. And see
But
there,
then,
Fatty treats on like one of his own. When Goon is mistreating him, Fatty takes him into his
Yeah, but he's
house. And
condescending.
but he's condescending. Yeah, I
no,
was
no,
just
one
going to say
Yeah.
that.
second. He's not
Not like his
condescending.
own.
He's not condescending. It's
No,
like
no.
I cannot, bring a servant uh,
into my child's kid
No,
into
no,
my
no. Hang on,
child's
hang on.
bedroom.
No, Anna.
That's not condescending. That is a
She did
class
it.
barrier.
No, it's a class. So therefore, he puts him in the shed. If it was Pip or Larry, he would have got him inside the house or
Yes,
given him
of
the spare
course.
bedroom. But
Of
because it's
course,
Earth,
yes.
he puts him in
So
the shed. So
No,
there is
no,
a
they are
because
difference.
not
Maria, they have
transcending
to.
the class
Maria,
barriers.
Yeah, yeah,
But he is being uh, he has
kind.
sympathized with that boy in his thing, and he's
yes,
doing
yes.
whatever
He's a
he
good
can to
boy.
help
Yes,
them
agreed,
within the
agreed.
constraints of his social situation.
Yeah.
That's as we would do now.
So if we look at the police, right?
Yeah,
If you remember in UK, right, at COVID time, what happened? The people spat on the police. Now, these are not people like us who spat on the police. It's their own people, their own class who spat on them. So the police sometimes they don't tend to misbehave with us, but they do tend to misbehave with the lower classes. So there is even the lower classes hate them. Let's be very clear on the
That's
matter.
true.
That's why
Yeah,
they
because they
spat on them.
represent authority, you know,
They represent
abuse of
authority,
power.
Yeah.
They
power, and
represent
they
abuse of
sometimes
power.
misuse it. And they
Mm,
sometimes misuse it, maybe more than sometimes.
yeah.
So I think that
Yes.
Goon did tend to misuse his power.
yeah.
And it's true that Fatih had a direct connection with the superintendent, which was quite yucky, but it reeks of corruption. But yeah, Goon, on the other hand, did have very negative
So,
Yeah,
qualities.
so
I
you
think that
know, so the
Goon is
que-
being presented as the sort of policeman who, abuses his power.
yeah. So the question really comes out. I mean, if you're talking of the modern generation, I mean, my children never went for
Yeah.
Enid Blyton at
Nor,
all,
nor even my grandkids. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And grandkids, I mean, my grandson has stopped at Noddy. After that, he's gone on to other things
Yeah.
and not Enid Blyton at all.
Yes.
So the thing is, the question really then arises: is it relevant to the
Yeah.
modern child? Because I think here the stories all appear a little fantasy-like
Yes,
without being fantasy. I
so,
mean, it's situations which I think the modern child cannot relate to today.
right. But then that's the same with books
With
like The Little Prince and The Secret Garden, the Anne books. You see,
no,
so
but even otherwise, no.
we're doing
I
these
think
books, uh, as a part of our
no, but as Runa's saying, Runa, when we were growing up, that was a total alien world for me too. We didn't
It
know anything about
was
trumpets. We didn't know anything about afternoon
true,
tea and
true,
scones and all
true,
those things.
Definitely.
true, true.
Nothing.
No,
yes, yes,
We
of
still
course.
kind of
I
related to
think
it.
part of the
Yeah.
charm of the Enid
Yes.
Blyton books, Alka, as you're saying, is this is a very
Was
different world,
different.
mm,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
found it very interesting.
Yes.
And you know, there was a lot of adventure,
Right.
there was
Yeah.
history and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I have to say that
Yeah.
that's what helped me to start reading.
correct,
It's
correct.
Yes.
only
Yes.
as an adult that I realized that there were, there were racist
Yeah.
undertones, which I missed completely as a child, and I
Yeah.
don't think it would have influenced my thinking. But
Exactly.
for example,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
gollywogs in the naughty books were always the
Yeah,
liars, the
Yeah.
cheats,
yeah, yeah.
and I never got to read that book, which made her very controversial, which was a little black doll, where
Mm.
Sambo the doll is regarded as a black and ugly face, and only when he finally gets washed and it's found that he's actually a pinkish white skin, and then only
Yeah.
he becomes acceptable. I never
I
read,
never read that, huh?
Yeah,
so
that
I
that one
never
is
got that.
that one. I mean, there's really that is rather
But
a
you know, the
terrible
fact that
story.
gollywogs, we always assume gollywog, and again, as an adult, I got to know that wog was a racist
Yes.
term. Westernized
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oriental
Yeah.
gentleman was actually a very derogatory racist term.
Yeah.
So I completely missed the racist
Because
undertone.
we didn't have that at all, right? Kaveri, at our time, no, when
It was,
we were at that time,
yeah,
the world was very, very simple. But now
right,
our children, they know
right,
all this. They know what is a Pride Week. They know what is this. They know what is that. They know
True.
all the
yeah.
difference. So for them to read that now, they'll immediately pick up on these things.
Yeah, I
Yeah, and
think
they
It
won't
was
now,
like
never.
it. No, I think they will find the stories, the pace of stories a bit slow.
Yeah.
Slow.
Also,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
believe
think.
I believe the BBC had banned any Enid Blyton stories from being radio cast or anything for 30 years because they didn't consider it was of literary value. I don't know whether that's the reason why she wasn't so widely available in the UK. But all our school libraries, somehow the missionary
They were
schools
full.
just stocked up on
Yeah,
Enid
Absolutely.
Blyton.
Absolutely.
So we read from our libraries the books and we loved them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was such
You know,
fun.
I
And they
think
were,
again that today's generation, why they don't like it is also, as Runa saying, they're slow, which is why even classics like how many of the youngers people have read Pride and Prejudice?
No.
Yeah.
I introduced it to the other book club which has a lot of youngsters. They had never read. They didn't
No.
know Jane Austen.
In fact, they
don't know
find it
because it's
hard
so
to read
slow.
on their own. They need guidance for reading it.
And it's so slow.
Alka,
It's so dead.
nowadays kids think that Chetan Bhagat is the height of literary.
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
God.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's
No,
And
no,
of course,
they're
Sudhamurthy.
brought up on Harry Potter and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Uh,
So yeah.
Harry Potter, by the way, is brought up on Enid Blyton.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It's a
yes, yes.
huge similarity.
I like
But
that.
you
I
know,
like
I
that.
want to say one thing that even we, when we read, there's so much of racism in English literature.
Absolutely.
The other day, I was looking for a prose passage for a kid, and I saw "Around the World in 80 Days." I
Oh,
said, that's a good passage. Okay, will you be interested in the story? I read the passage. It says, "Oh, but how do you know the Hindus won't be tearing up the rails?" Hello, Phileas Fogg, what are you talking about?
and
So,
Sati and all that. He saves that woman from Sati, no?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
he
here
did.
he's saying the Hindus will be tearing up the rails. What do you mean by attacking a religion? Are you talking about the Indian independence
No,
movement?
no,
Or
no,
what?
no, no, no,
What do
no.
you mean by saying the Hindus will be
No,
pulling up
no.
the rails?
Hindus, he is probably using the word as it was used in the old times. Anything west of the Indus was Hindustan and therefore the Hindus, not as a
Maybe.
religion.
Anyway,
Yes.
and then there was a poem by Christina Rossetti in the Round Tower. It's about Jhansi and this lovers in the tower, and they see the hordes. Hi, they've described the Indian freedom fighters as the hordes, HORDES. So one has to be so careful
Well,
when
that way, Rudyard Kipling is no less. I mean,
yes,
yes,
come on.
yes.
Of
yes.
course.
No,
Very much.
even in the Secret Garden,
Yeah.
I was reading it where it starts off in India. I
Mm.
had to explain to my students that, because she said talks about black people,
Yeah.
and then, so I had to say that, at that time, this was the attitude. And, as if the ayahs were some dumb creatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's full of it. The only
No,
thing
that's
we
very
can do
British
is,
Raji, no?
yes, but we can't
Mm.
stop people from reading
No.
it because it
No.
has so much to
No,
offer.
we shouldn't
We
because
have to discuss, we have to engage with,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
our students and
You can't deny the past. That is how it was. And it's a
exactly.
picture to that. And, don't accept it. Read it as a picture of the society of those times and then go
Yes,
on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
Enid Blyton was apparently a very colorful character.
Really?
So yeah, so she would often engage in what is called nude tennis. She would play nude tennis. Did you know that?
No. What's
Yeah,
that? Cards, you
yeah.
mean? Strip
And
poker.
as one of you said that no, no, this is not poker. I didn't know
What
that such
is
a
that?
thing existed. Apparently, in a certain class of the Britishers, they would occasionally do that. And her first, as you mentioned, I think her first marriage ended in divorce, and the second one, she developed dementia. I think towards the end of
Yes,
her life.
yes.
So she was quite an unusual woman. Uh, but there's no doubt, I think, that at least for our generation, I think it helped many of us to start reading.
Yes.
Because that was what was available in our school libraries. And then we started reading and we got an interest in reading. And then we would move on to other things as well. And
Absolutely.
stories were
And
really delightful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
and
Stories is
I
very good.
And that's
I
what children are
feel
looking for. They're looking for stories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
And
but I
Enid
feel that
Blyton.
the certain movements in the world today,
Hmm.
yeah,
right? The whole
yeah.
environment. I'm not saying she solely, but people who have playing a large role in
Mm.
these movements, like the women's movement, environmental movement, whatever, they have been influenced by literature, not especially Enid Blyton, but she
Mhm.
has played her role in influencing how we view our world today. We who
Mhm.
have kind of now in charge of the world and will
Mhm.
soon be handing over to kids who are reading David volumes where the Queen is in underwear of the British flag. You know, so let's see how that goes.
Ah, ah.
Right.
But
So,
American kids grew up on something very different.
Mm.
So, and you said, Moni, both
the
you and
prairie, the
Runa, that you didn't
prairie book.
find Enid Blyton
Mhm.
when you were in England. They grew up on very different kinds of books.
That's true.
And this kind of a little colonial things of kids, as you said, maybe
No, Enid
privileges.
Blyton would appeal to the Commonwealth countries because
Yeah,
all the
correct.
upper class people
Yeah.
who availed of that English
Right,
convent or Anglican
Education.
education,
right,
it
right,
appealed across the world like that.
right, right.
America, it was Little House on the Prairie,
Yeah.
Little House in the Big
Absolute
Woods and
classic.
all. I
Yeah,
used to
that
love
whole
it.
series, that whole
Yeah,
series,
that whole series.
also delightful,
And
that-
Jack
Maybe Anna of Green
London,
And
and
Gables.
the
Yes. I
completely
think Anna of
different
all of
Green
kind of
those.
Gables as well.
So,
Anna of
Anna of
Green
so,
Green
Gables.
Gables. Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah.
So I think what we have done today is basically review Enid Blyton in a context where we're very, very conscious, of the backlash against her today.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
And I think Anna and Maria have very successfully defended her,
Yeah.
you
Thank
know,
you.
on
That's so
several
nice to
counts.
know.
Yeah, you have defended her, and I think, you're absolutely right. Now, I would like everyone to just look at the chat box because Pratima Agnihotri, who, does join us often, apparently came for a short time, listened, and this is what she said. And then she left, and she apparently phoned Satish and told him, please, ask everyone to read. So she
Mhm.
has written, every author is rooted in his or her times,
Right,
right?
right,
Absolutely.
And I think this is the conclusion that we have reached, that you
right.
have to forgive. I mean, forgive whatever lapses or prejudices or whatever, because after all, she is a person rooted in her times. Every writer is,
Correct.
every book which
Mm-hmm,
is reread in a different age, different context, is
mm-hmm,
interpreted different.
mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, and all that.
Yeah.
How was it then when he wrote it?
Mm-hmm.
And how does it seem now? And so on and so forth. So she has said there are a number of allusions. How much can one uproot a text from its time? And so on. Okay. So I
That's
think
true.
basically we are all very much in agreement. That's what I
Agreement.
Correct, correct.
would conclude in saying.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had read Maureen Blyton, really.
You can
See, I
still,
think
it's not late,
Alka,
Mohini. You can still
It's not
start.
too
I have the
late.
whole session.
We'll all send
Alka,
you a book.
I
Make
will
time
borrow,
pass.
I will borrow Alka's copies and read them.
Uh,
I used to
I
read a
think,
book a day in
yeah,
school.
yeah. I was 11 when I came back and started school in India, in Delhi. There was only one girl in my class who read. But
Oh,
I will say there were only 8 girls in the class, the rest were all boys.
Hmm.
But this one girl loved Enid Blyton and she made me read, one. I wasn't too keen because I thought, oh, that's bacha stuff. I'm
11 is a bit
past it.
late, huh?
But
Yeah, it
I
is
read
late.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you have all said, so highly readable,
Yeah.
so pleasant, and such fun, such uncomplicated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
it's
Yes.
so
interesting.
I read
I think,
all the books that she lent me, which is all that she had. There were 6 or 7. But today you mentioned so many that I have not come
Oh,
across.
she
Oh,
hundreds. Oh
and the
my
point
God.
is, Mohini, she has this
Certainly.
series. So there
yeah,
are multiple series of books, and all
Yeah,
the books
yeah, a whole lot.
all
I think,
similar, but they're
yeah.
totally different from books in other series.
I
correct.
Yeah,
think those of us
really.
who were
Fascinating.
in girls'
Yeah,
schools, somehow they
yeah, yeah.
always, in the
Yes.
libraries, they got these
Yeah,
books,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Our
You,
library did not have them at all.
right. You were in a co-ed school. But
Co-ed.
You
Yeah,
were
I
in
was in
modern
a
co-ed will
school.
not have it.
especially
And much more boys than girls.
girls convent schools in Delhi. I was in
Yeah.
Kabul convent in Delhi, and
Yes.
we
They're
had read
full of
only
Shake
Enid
hands,
Blyton.
right.
Alka. Same library. You might have read the same books.
And
Yeah,
I was in Loreto. Loreto was just
yeah,
full of
yeah, yeah.
Enid
Same thing.
Blyton.
Yeah, our school also had a lot of Enid Blyton books, but
Yeah.
also other titles, not only.
Of course.
And the librarians used to encourage us to
read
know,
Read
other
them.
read, yeah.
But
Not
I
to
remember when I
stick
was
to
Okay.
one title.
growing up, I remember now at this age, I remember reading anybody for sure. Nancy Drew. I remember
Yes.
reading Hardy Boys. I remember
Yeah, my
reading this
daughter,
Captain
yeah.
Biggles, which I, for some reason I used to love, though he was a total World War hero and all
Yeah.
men. There was not a single female character in the book, but somehow I used to like them. So these are the books I remember reading. I don't remember reading any other, offhand. I mean, Little Women and all came a bit
Yes.
later.
Nancy
Yeah.
Drew, Nancy Drew.
Nancy Drew, yeah, I said Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew,
Because
Hardy Boys, Enid Blyton. These are the
well, my
ones which
daughter
I.
certainly read these. Yeah, I
What
didn't.
was
I
the
didn't
doctor one?
my time.
Cherry Ames. Yes. There were the American ones also.
Okay.
Cherry
I don't remember.
Ames.
I don't remember reading the American ones so much. I remember reading the British authors mostly.
Ah,
Yeah,
All
but
of these.
Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden are American, no?
yes.
Oh, they are American. Sorry, yeah. Trixie Belden, these two I remember. Even Hardy Boys is American.
Hardy Boys is
American,
also
Hardy Boys
exactly.
also.
American. Yes.
And
And
yeah,
then
so
what
these
were
are
those romance ones? Or
teen
those
novels.
Teen novels. There were
Teen
these
novels.
teen novels.
American teen novels.
But that was for
No, no.
older children, like,
Sweet
13
Valley.
and
Yeah,
above.
teen.
I think my time, romance was only Mills and Boone, which came much later in life.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
yeah.
it
I
came
know,
much
comes
later.
very early,
But
doesn't it?
at that age, it
That
was
was
only.
another rite of passage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
Now,
So
now
I,
I want to know why Satish is no camera, no mic, not a word to say. Be
He
said.
doesn't like Enid.
Oh.
I said,
Satish,
sorry, I contacted Satish. I
about
couldn't
to
get through today.
I was
Let me
about
tell
to
you
speak for
honestly,
him.
Maria, I really didn't like uh, this these books. After I think about, I was 9 or 10 years old. And
But you loved
it-
them till then.
till then, I had never seen from age of 2 or 3 in the book. Like I've told you the story about how I was lost and found in the library. My first day in school, I got lost in the library. And okay, whatever. So it's a long story. But coming back, the first few years it used to be that fellow librarian would give me the books, and he tried to bring me up a little more, a little more, a little more. Old man, didn't know Anglo-Indian, didn't speak two words, but just used to come and leave a book in front of me. And that's how I started building up slowly. Yes, 6, 7. Yes, Enid Blyton was there. There was all those
Oh, you read
this and that. But what do you call that?
So we were just talking about girls reading them more than boys. But I do
Oh.
think boys also read them.
The
Yes,
boys also
boys
read them.
also did.
I know my brother did.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think it was then a missionary school staple.
I think Satish also read, but he doesn't want to admit.
he said
No,
but he did.
seriously,
He
I
did
did
read.
read. I did
Yeah,
read.
he used to read.
I mean, as I said, from this thing, third, up to the 5th or the 6th
You know,
standard,
I know he
I
read,
read
but
that.
sometimes he mentions them. Character or something. And because I haven't read them, you see. And I know he has.
Yeah.
I'll tell you other one that all of us started.
Anna and Maria, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was most
We have
enjoyable.
all enjoyed your review of Enid Blyton. Hmm? And those details of her biography, at least I had not known. So,
Kaveri's detail was fascinating. Which we did not know
I
at
agree.
all.
When I teach literature, I always tell the kids, biography is not important. We are going to look at the text. And then you read the text in your age and all that. But human curiosity, you want to know about the writer, and it's been interesting getting to know. So thank you very much. This is a little different than the usual thing we do. We just take up one text.
But it was lovely and nostalgic.
Great
Thank
fun.
you both.
What?
Child, and I incidentally grew up at the Convent of Jesus and Mary in Delhi,
Okay,
and
got
we
three
did have
different
Enid
people.
Blyton in the library, and I thoroughly enjoyed the adventure of the
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
and I
And
have loved
there is another person who just switched off for phone also.
Okay. So
Just-
thank you everyone for coming, for participating, for airing your views. This was very refreshing.
Thank
So-
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And thank you, Maria and Anna. Thank you so much for letting us talk about Enid Blyton. It's been a wonderful
Yeah,
I
thing.
know.
we also
Thank you,
enjoyed
childhood.
the discussion very much.
Delightful.
Lovely.
It has been a delightful session.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
very much.
thank you.
Now,
Okay.